back to this part here. So are there any questions about a paper-based presentation? Now the only thing about this device that I really do not like is it's sticking right in front of the presenter. So if you want to talk to the maintain eye contact, I can bring a longer USB cable so that that device will be standing here, but you still need to kind of step kind of offset to the document camera so it doesn't block your view to your audience. In other words, don't hide behind the document camera, because that will kind of interfere with your eye contact with your audience. Is that making any sense? Okay. So are there any other questions about using a document camera for your presentation? You only need about 6 slides or so, okay? So you can put it on cardstock if you want to, but that's definitely not required because this whole thing will be rested on this particular desk. So you do have a flat surface to begin with. So as long as the paper that you bring in is not crumbled or curled in any way, it will stay flat and it will show fairly well in this class. Yep.
What's the highest resolution still that does?
It can go up to 5 megapixels. So if you look at the configuration screen, go to video and files, it can go all the way up to about 2600 by 2000. The highest I have ever tried is actually just 1600 by 1200, and the resolution is actually pretty good. You can make a photocopy of something that is in like say 10-point font, and it will still be very clear. The biggest problem I have with this device is to control the brightness and the contrast, so that things details will show, but the actual resolution of the camera is not bad. Are there any questions related to this aspect of your presentation? No questions? Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to illustrate how to use Google Documents to prepare your presentation electronically. Now, when you log into your Gmail account, I think you should see something similar to this, if not exactly the same. So what you do is you go to Drive. Do you guys see Drive or Document? Drive, okay, so you have Google Drive already. Google Document is the older name of the same product, but you have Google Drive in this case. So once you get to Google Drive, you can click Create. And when you click Create, I think you know which one we should be choosing. We'll be choosing Presentation, okay? The presentation document in Google Drive is basically a quote-unquote watered-down version of a PowerPoint presentation or a LibreOffice Impress presentation. So they all serve about the same purpose. This one doesn't give you as many options as far as transitions, backgrounds, and stuff like that goes. But for a presentation like what we have to do, this is more than sufficient. So you just pick presentation, and it'll give you a blank presentation. And it starts with a selection of what do you want to use as your style. So it has all these different styles to begin with, with some with like interesting background, like Spotlight. You have to kind of think about, will it even show, correctly on this screen? Spotlight, if you see over there, it actually has a graduated background. In other words, the color changes very gradually. It doesn't show well in this class at this point because we have all the lights turned on in the back. So a lot of the details in the darker portion are kind of hidden. I can't see the other ones because my scroll bar is not to be found. So I just pick the default one in this case. You can always go back and change your presentation format later on. This is the first slide. The first slide, always starts with a title and a subtitle. The title is basically, what is the main title of your presentation. So in this case, my main presentation is going to be SB 520, and we'll talk about what is SB 520, how to do your research, and how do you connect to your audience, in just a little bit. And then the subtitle, just like on that piece of paper, I'm going to write the future of online education, and in parentheses, or their lack of. All right. So what you want to do is to pick a title or a subtitle, that is kind of catchy, okay? Something that will kind of raise the interest of the audience. If I only give you the title of SB 520, is that interesting at all? No. But if I talk about online education, maybe it is a little bit more interesting to this particular audience. Okay. So now we have the first slide, and to insert a new slide, you just click this drop-down bar here, and it gives you some basically pre-formatted type of slides. What we see here is the title slide, but you can also select title and body, and title and 2 columns, title only, caption blank. If you select blank, it gives you the option to create your own title and also the body. So let me just pick this one, and this is what it looks like. And I think for the most part, this would be the correct or the right format to use. So on each slide, it has its own title, the title of the slide itself, and then you can also click on the this portion here, which is called the body of the slide. And then normally I just use a bulleted list or a numbered list on that slide to present the individual points. Okay. So that's the mechanic side of a presentation. So what I'll do now is to switch to what about the subject matter? Okay, how do I what do I do with the subject matter so I can finish a 3-minute presentation and kind of make sure that, or hope that my audience will walk away with some information that is actually useful. So the first slide typically will have to basically address the question of why do I care? From the audience perspective, why do you care about SB 520? Okay, so what I'll do is I'm just going to type why do you care? Okay. So in this case, I is really the presenter, and then you is the audience. Okay. Now I have to make my points. To make my points, I'm going to use a bulleted list. And you should not really have too many items on the list on each slide. I would say 5 to 7 is about right. Okay, if you try to stuff more things into it, it would just be kind of too busy and more difficult for people to actually grasp what you're talking about. We'll deal with animation and all kinds of transitions later on. So focus on content first, okay? Don't look through all the different fonts and all the different backgrounds, all the different colors. Okay, focus on the content first. Okay. So in this case, why do you care about SB 520? Let's go to SB 520 itself, and this is the document. This is the Senate Bill, 520, which talks about online student access platform. Now, from your perspective, okay, if you read through this whole thing, it's really long. I'm not going to read the entire thing to you. If you're interested, you can read it yourself. But what the essence of this is, the state is going to mandate the offering of some 50 courses through the California Virtual Campus, which is a statewide platform. So they will select 50 courses, 50 most impacted courses to offer through that platform. Okay. So why would that matter to you? If you want to get a transfer degree of any kind and the courses that you need for the transfer.
Does that mean there won't be any more lectures?
Sorry?
Does that mean they won't offer them as lecture classes anymore?
No, they can still offer face-to-face versions of those courses. But if any college, including ARC, wants to offer those courses online, they are required to go through this California Virtual Campus platform to offer those courses.
Interesting.
Okay, go ahead.
So it isn't that it's mandating that those 50 classes exist, it's that if those 50 classes are going online, that it has to be through that platform?
Yes, that's basically what it's saying.
Okay.
Now, from your perspective, it's beneficial in a certain way. Okay, yeah. So we'll talk about why it may be beneficial from the perspective of students, but sometimes in the long run it may not be beneficial to the entire education system in California. Okay. So once you start to locate, find out what the reasons are, why people should care about it, then you can say, better availability. Okay, that's one thing that you probably care as a student. How many times have you tried to sign up to a class, sign up a particular class that you need for your degree or certificate, and the class is so impacted that you have tried to sign up for the same class in 3 semesters and still could not get into the class like that? Okay. I think many of you have an experience of at least waiting for 1 semester to get into a class that you need in order to get your degree or certificate. Okay, so better availability is definitely one of the reasons why people should care about SB 520 from a student's perspective. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to the document again, and just kind of scroll through it a little bit. In fact, the best way to read this is go all the way to the bottom. Yep, go ahead.
I guess another thing is that it offers more flexibility.
In what way?
Well, that you can take the class anytime and you don't have to show up for a specific class time if you take it online.
But that is true already if you take a course through the Los Rios own online offering platform, which is a D2L and also Moodle. I mean, there are professors teaching online courses through Moodle entirely online.
I see.
Okay. Now,
I was just saying that for the PowerPoint, if you wanted to say what people might think about.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that applies to online courses in general. But what I want to focus is SB 520. Okay, now that's a very good point. When you are making your own presentation, make sure that you don't digress too much. Okay, because you only got 3 minutes to get the point across. So make sure your focus is on the very subject matter that you are trying to introduce to your audience. And anything that is kind of extra, you don't want to kind of include it unless you think, oh, this is really, really relevant and I need to talk about it. Okay. But from your perspective, one other good thing about this one, this particular Senate bill is if there's one, okay, let's say we are talking about algorithm design and problem solving, okay, which is one of the courses that is common to. Well, that one is not. Let me pick another example. Structured programming in C and C++. That's a course that is basically offered by just about every community college in the state, and it is transferable to just about any CSU and UC in their computer science and computer engineering and electrical engineering program. But the articulation between campuses is really complicated, because it is possible that one campus of this district, let's say ARC, has a curriculum that articulates with UC Davis. But another campus, let's say CRC, in this district, may not have the same articulation. So when you take courses like that, then you have to really navigate. You have to navigate through all these articulation agreements carefully to make sure that the courses that you are taking from a particular campus can in fact transfer to the college that you're transferring to. Okay, are you guys seeing the inherent complexity when courses can be offered by different colleges in different ways, and the articulation to CSU and UCs can also be completely individualized. Okay, so Davis may look at our curriculum again and say, yep, that's basically the same thing as what we're teaching with this in lower division class, and say, yep, we'll let you articulate with us. And then another UC campus, let's say UC Berkeley, can look at the very same curriculum, which is a description of what we're teaching, the topics, student learning outcome and stuff like that, and say, no, this does not match, what our lower division course is offering or teaching, and therefore we are not going to give you any articulation agreement. It doesn't transfer anymore. So every UC campus can choose, their own articulation agreement with any other campus that's transferring to that campus. And that's why we have assist.org to help you guys figure out, okay, if I take this class here and I'm planning to transfer to this program of that particular university, will it transfer? Okay, assist.org is basically designed for that purpose. And it has its purpose of life because of this complexity. What this Senate bill is saying is one class, okay, will fit all. Okay, they will have one class that is Introduction to C, C++ Structured Programming, and it will transfer. Okay, it can be offered by any community college campus, and it will transfer to any UC or CSU campus. if you take it through the virtual campus this way. Okay, so is that a good thing or bad thing from your perspective?
Good thing.
It's absolutely good, right? Because now it's very easy for you to navigate, okay, which course should I take to make sure that it will transfer to which other university? You know what? It's easy, okay, because they will guarantee the transferability of those courses. So one way to look at this document, if you want to, is to use the search feature in the browser and just look for the word transfer, okay? So this bill, okay, I'm just gonna highlight the sentence that I'm reading right here. This bill will require the platform, among other things, to provide an efficient statewide mechanism for online course providers to offer transferable courses for credit and to create a pool of these online courses. So they are specifically targeting transferable courses, initially. And they will pick 50 most impacted transferable courses to start with, with this virtual campus. Okay, so that's a good thing. So I go back to my presentation slide and add that part here. Okay, easier to figure out what courses transfer. Okay, because otherwise you would have to figure out, okay, where am I taking it? Where am I transferring this course to? Which program am I trying to transfer to? And then you have to look up assist.org for each and every course to make sure that they are transferable. If you take it through this virtual campus, it is already transferable, so you're all set. Okay. Any other questions about either the software itself or the standard bill itself? Because I'm trying to do two things at the same time. Yep.
You said that it's mandatory to take those online classes. Use a mask in order to
I'll put it this way. We already have cisc310 on this campus, which is structured programming in C and C++. The subject matter is not important. I'm just using that as an example. The way it is right now is it may transfer to a particular UC campus, and then it may not transfer to another campus. It depends on the agreement between ARC and the discipline of the other campus. Okay, if the same course is offered through the California virtual campus, then by virtue of being offered through that particular platform, it is transferable. It doesn't matter whether you take that course, quote unquote, from ARC or CRC or Sierra College, as long as it is offered through the virtual campus, it has to transfer to CSUs and UCs. Yep, go ahead.
I got walked in here kind of late, but I'm trying to find out, is what you talking about right now, is it about our presentation that we turn around need to have, for next week, or is it just something in general that you kind of letting us know?
All of the above.
I walked in kind of late, so I'm just trying to find out.
All of the above.
Okay,
so I'm using it as an example to show three things at the same time. One, how to use the presentation software, because I want to encourage more people to use an electronic presentation instead of a paper-based one. So early in the class, I showed people how to use the paper-based one. You just put whatever presentation slide you have prepared on a piece of paper, just like this. And if you put it under the document camera, which I have shown here, it will show up on the screen like that. So this is one way to do a presentation. So that's what we talked about earlier in the class. And now I'm going to talk about how to use the Google Drive presentation software. So how to use the software is one. The standard bill itself is another thing that I do want to talk about. And then the third thing is how do you organize your presentation. So those are all the things that I'm trying to demonstrate in one single class. Yep, go ahead.
What problem do you think this bill's trying to solve?
It's trying to solve multiple problems. Like the transferability is one problem. Okay, from your perspective, you have to navigate and through all these obstacles to figure out what courses transfer and what courses do not transfer. Mm-hmm. And so you cannot, if you cannot get into our CISP360, but let's say Sierra College has their own CISP360 or C and C++ programming course, and they have an opening, okay, and they have they have space left in their classes. So you can potentially take the course, through Sierra College. But the way it is right now is if their college doesn't have an articulation agreement with the UC or CSU that you want to transfer to, it doesn't make any sense to take that class from Sierra College because it won't transfer. It won't count to your transfer degree. So that's one of the advantages of SB 520 is to guarantee the transferability of the basic 50 core courses. Is that answering your question?
Yeah. So even if you take the same class at a different school, it might not transfer over?
That is correct. Yep. If you go to assist.org, they will first ask you, several things, but basically what it is it will answer the question. Okay, this is the kind of question it answers. You're taking this particular course from this campus. Will it transfer to this particular program of this other university? It answers that particular question. And the whole reason why we even have assist.org is because the articulation agreement, which is basically saying, yes, we'll take this course and this course and this course from this college. That agreement is entirely up to the two universities and the departments thereof. And that's why it is difficult because just because ARC articulates a particular course with the electrical engineering department of UC Davis doesn't mean that another UC campus has the same agreement. Yep, go ahead.
I'm seeing two perspectives here. It sounds like the state is either trying to strong arm the colleges to set a standard to say or the university to accept the collegiate level courses, or they're trying to set a bar for them, or maybe a threshold for all.
Okay, well yep, you're absolutely right. It's trying to address multiple problems, and it does not have to be addressed through a virtual campus. Because independent to the virtual campus, we already have something in the works, of the AST, has you guys heard of the AST degree? It's an Associate of Science degree, but the T stands for transferable. So when you look at the AST, it is a statewide agreement. Okay, if you complete the AST of computer science, let's say, okay, so the computer science discipline has an AST, psychology probably has an AST, accounting has an AST. Okay, so every major subject area has a transferable degree. So once you get your AST from any campus, any community college campus, it means that you have to be transferable to an equivalent program in any CSU and UC in California. And that is regardless of whether you take your courses face-to-face or online. If you have your AST, you're good to transfer. So that issue about transferability is already being addressed by the AST standardization. And it does not necessarily have to use the virtual campus for that purpose. But the virtual campus has the advantage of being able to include students that are not local. So let's say ARC online courses are completely impacted. You cannot get to the class that you want to get into. But the same class offered through, let's say San Diego City College has an opening. Now you cannot do it because they may not articulate and they may have problems and it's not going through the same platform. But through the virtual campus, you just have to say, oh, instead of taking it from an ARC professor, now I can take it from a San Diego City College professor, but it really is the same class, same course, and it articulates exactly the same way. So there are advantages to this approach because you can be here physically, but you can take a course that is basically administered by a professor that is somewhere else in the state. Is that making any sense? Yep.
Yeah, I met somebody who she's married and she went to Italy to get her husband's job, and she was taking ARC classes. So she went to Italy and she took online classes there.
Okay.
And, my query right now is that Sierra College is not Los Rios, right?
No, Sierra College is its own district. It is not a part of the Los
Part of
Rios
the Los
district.
Rios.
Right.
So that's what there is some issues with
But even within the district, we have different articulation agreements. So ARC, CRC, FLC, and SAC City, SCC, we all have our individual articulation agreements with the CSUs and the UCs. And that's why the big mess, because even within the same district, it doesn't guarantee that your courses will transfer. Okay, so the next point, which is also in the Senate bill, is to basically make more efficient use of resources. So this is important from the perspective of not necessarily students, but taxpayers. So if you don't pay taxes, it will be your parents who will say, yeah, we want that because I want my tax dollar to go an extra mile. Because instead of having every single campus or every single district to maintain their own LMS software platform, the hardware, the software, the licensing and whatnot, now they have one centralized platform, okay? And that may improve the efficiency of the system. So instead of having IT staff here on this campus and then IT staff at Sierra College, IT staff at the San Diego City College, IT staff at CCSF, and so on, there'll be one centralized IT department for the virtual campus. And that's why they think it will be a better use of resources. Yep.
Okay, I just I want to ask you a question because right now I'm getting kind of confused.
Okay.
Because, don't get me wrong, I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm seeing what you're putting on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And one point of it, you sit there and says dealing with our presentation, what we're going to turn around and do by next week. But at the same time, like I said, don't get me wrong, it sounds like a political thing that's going on that you're putting out there that's dealing with the school and what's happening with the.
I'm using it as right.
You may be using an example,
right?
But you're confusing me because I'm like, okay, well, I'm hearing you, and I'm listening to you, mm-hmm. and I'm like, okay, well, as far as our presentation that we have to do, next week and stuff, that's fine. But right now, it seems like it's a more political agenda, and I'm just kind of trying to figure out: are you trying to, give us knowledge of maybe what's going on and stuff? Because and that's good because I like what I'm hearing because you're giving us knowledge. What may be going on with.
I'm giving you my opinion, my interpretation.
But
that's not knowledge.
It's like the presentation part of it. It's like you put it in the presentation part, but at the same time, I'm losing you because I don't know what you sit there and just actually speaking on something that we should know.
Okay.
And what we shouldn't know.
Okay.
Because that makes me feel like, okay, what I'm doing. Okay, I already know, like right now I know what my presentation is going to be about.
Okay, but what about the organization of your presentation and what tool are you going to use for your presentation? Those are the things that you can focus. You can ignore, what I say about the Senate bill altogether. You can agree, disagree, or just completely ignore that part. That really is just an example that I want to use to illustrate, how do you organize how do you organize your presentation and how do you utilize the tool for your presentation? Are you getting, separating the content? What you really need to get out of this class is how to organize and how to use the tool. SB 520, if you care, it's good. If you don't care, that's okay with me too. As far as this class is concerned, you will not be graded in any way by your opinion or knowledge or their lack of SB 520.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I can understand that, you may be bringing something up. To me, that's when I kind of got lost.
I don't want to use a computer-related topic because I don't want to...
politically, rated and stuff.
No, your grade has nothing to do with SB 520. I'm just using it as an example.
Oh, okay. Because I see a lot of people is interested in what you said saying on it, and I'm interested as well. I'm just kind of like, okay, is this something you
so
want to?
While you're paying attention to SB 520, also pay attention to how to organize your presentation and also how to use the tool. Okay, so I'm hoping that the Senate bill is not, making, is not distracting your attention too much, But since this is recorded, you can always watch it, a few more times. one more time for the tool and one more time for the organization, and just ignore all the talk about the standard build itself.
Well, no, I mean, like I say, I'm interested in what they're saying.
Right.
And
But don't let it distract you.
And, and I done wrote things on PowerPoint presentation as far as that, but I was just trying to figure out, was this just something that you kind of like just throwing kind of away, just kind of let us know, and stuff, because, I was getting confused by it, because I was like, everybody is interested in it, and I'm not often in politics, but when I'm hearing, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder
But
about
that's
what's going
something
on.
that you should get out of this presentation, is how do you get the interest of your audience, right? So why are you interested so far at this point? Is it because SB 520 is a particularly interesting, abbreviation and number? But does 520 mean something special to you? Or SB? Not really, right? But you're interested because I am presenting in a way that relates to you. So what you need to do with your own presentation is to use the same technique. Try to connect to your audience. Why should I care about gaming computers? I'm not a gamer. But you might want to get into gaming because of all these different games. Maybe one of these genres will interest you. Okay. Or why am I interested in online privacy? Okay. I never do anything wrong. I don't really care whether people can read my email. Well, maybe you want to you care about privacy because these corporations may be selling private information about you to other organizations that you really don't want to that you don't want those organizations to have your information. So what you need to do is to go through the same process and see how you can connect with your audience and make them interested in whatever you're presenting. So that's the other aspect of what I'm doing here, is to use this as an example. I mean, how many of you have tried to read a Senate bill because I want to read a Senate bill just to figure out what things are how things are happening in the Capitol? Yep.
Sometimes I think they write those just so that regular citizens would bother reading the whole thing.
Oh, they want to fast track this whole thing too. Okay, so before I waste all the time and not being able to finish what I really want to accomplish today, so I'm just going to move forward, okay? And since this whole thing is recorded, you can always watch it again for specific items or specific interests in the presentation. Yes.
Since you trying to make a point, you already see that it's going to take more than 3 minutes to make a point.
Well, the
I mean,
preparation.
you-
No. Wait.
you
That's not true, because I'm talking about this is the organization, this is the research, this is how you look at the material that you want to present, and then figure out how do I make the point, in my slides. Okay. So all my explanation. How many of you already know SB 520 to begin with before this class? Nobody, right? So I have to give you the background information. Then we can look at the actual bullet items on the slides, and then we can say, oh, okay, so that's why we put those bullet items on this particular slide. Okay, so your preparation of a 3-minute presentation should be a lot more than 3 minutes. Even if you know the subject matter already, you still have to spend a lot more than 3 minutes to prepare the material for a 3-minute presentation. Is that making any sense? So that's why I'm doing it here, and that's why it's taking longer, than 3 minutes to prepare the slides. Okay, so I got to move forward. Otherwise, we won't be able to finish the 3-minute presentation at all. Okay, the other thing that the standard bill is also saying is it will ensure higher quality because now it is monitored by a statewide agency instead of up to each individual campus. So they will make sure that there are synchronous contact between faculty and students, as well as asynchronous communication between faculty and students, and therefore from your perspective you might be getting higher quality education out of the online courses. Okay. So I think that's good enough for one slide, 4 points. What you might want to do if you say that, well, these are all kind of compacted and doesn't spread out correctly, you can always go to format and then go to paragraph style, and not that. line spacing, excuse me, you can go to line spacing and then select double spacing, so that the bullets will be spaced out a little bit more evenly when you only have 4 points on that slide. So in this case, I go to line spacing 2.0, double line spacing, and now they're spread out a little bit more evenly. Now, if you want to add animation, which is definitely not required, what you can also do is to select the things that you want to animate, and then you go to, I think it's under arrange. This is a transition within, from one slide to the next. Let's see here.
There's a different notepad.
Sorry?
There's like a different notepad. It's like one of those.
Oh, one of these thingy. Most of these can be done with either way, but we can talk about slide animation. So you can change the transition. So right now there are no transitions. You can select one of these particular transitions to transition from one slide to the next. I would just do something simple like fade. If you select fade and apply it from one slide to the next, okay, we'll just apply it to all slides. And this is how it shows, it just kind of fades out from one and then it fades into the next one. But remember, don't spend too much time on the animation until you're ready. This part here lets me add more notes to it. Basically that would be notes to myself. Okay, so I think I got the first slide done. Okay, animation, they're definitely optional. The next thing you want to do is once you get the interest of the audience, then you can actually go in and talk about the details of the Senate bill, and also potentially why you think it might have some potential issues too, or other things that you feel that maybe it's not so good, maybe that needs to be addressed. Okay. Are there any questions? Okay, let me just test to see if you guys know how to do it. How do I add a new slide right now? I'm on my second slide right now, so how do I add a new slide? Yep.
We'll drop down
On the plus?
Plus, yeah.
Yep, so I just add a new slide. And unless you have a very unusual need to use one of the other ones, a title and a body typically would be what you need to do. Okay, so once you get the interest, okay, of the audience, in this case, you're basically telling your audience, oh, look at this Senate bill. It will give you all these things. Okay, then you can explain how it can accomplish all those things. Okay, so you can say how SB 520 works. And here you can include more details, but I would not include like full sentences. In this particular case, I would just include information like this. Okay, this will be mandatory transferability. In other words, you're not reading off your slide. Your slide should not contain complete sentences where you can just look at your slide and just read out the entire thing. It should only contain the main concept that you want to talk about, and then you just talk about it live, okay, without you reading it off of the slide itself. You might have like little note cards to help you to remind yourself, oh, okay, this particular clause of the Senate bill is what I want to mention. Okay, specific details that you might not remember during the presentation, put it on a little note. Quality assurance, standardized courses, and etc. Basically, this part would be completely dependent on your particular subject matter. Are there any questions? So this might take multiple slides, okay, depending on what you're trying to explain. If you're explaining how to put a gamer computer together, this will take multiple slides because you have to talk about what processor to choose, what video card to choose, what kind of power supply to choose. So each one might take one slide, and you can include pictures too. How do you include picture in something like this? You just say insert and image, and this will actually let you drag and drop an image into here. You can also do it by URL. In other words, you can borrow a picture from somebody else. So if you want to just kind of make this presentation a little bit more fun and include pictures, you can just go to like online courses, look up Google, and then look up images, and find out which one is more interesting to you. Let's say this one here. Okay. Open culture, open original image, and now you have the URL or the web address of that particular image. Do a Control-C to copy, go back to your presentation, go to Insert, go to Image, and then insert by URL. Do a Control-V to paste the URL, click Select, and it is huge, okay? So you want to size this one a little bit. When you're sizing an image, there are tricks to it too. If you use the tool just like the way it is, you can make it too flat or make it too tall because the aspect ratio is not preserved. If you press the Control key first, then the aspect ratio will be preserved because it doesn't let you do a free-form resizing. So you can just resize this thing, and it makes it its own slide. Okay, let's move that to the previous one. Copy, paste. So I can move an image to it's in the other one. The other one is what I want. Must have inserted it twice. There we go. And if you want it to look even more dynamic, you can make it rotate by using this little tab here. You can make it rotate, at a certain angle. Yep, go ahead.
Can you send the picture back and put the text forward?
Yes, you can put the picture, quote unquote, in the back. Let me see if I can do it here.
It's on arrange.
You can right click and under arrange, you can put it in the order. You can send it backwards. So now the picture is in the back. I think the right click should work too, except I don't have enough space on the screen to show that arrange. So are there any questions at this point? Nope. Now remember, what the limitations that we are seeing here on this particular screen are when you're using a regular computer, you won't have those limitations because you'll be running your screen at a much higher resolution. So you will see the full menu. When you do a right click, you will see the menu as well, the entire full menu. I can only see a very small portion of all the available menu items because I'm running this screen at a much lower resolution. Are there any questions at this point? Yep, go ahead.
How can I set up the time between slides?
Set up the time.
Yes, I mean, the slide 1, 2, 3, and the slide 1, I got 5 seconds, 20 seconds.
You may not want to automate it. In other words, because you will be doing the presentation interactively, so you should probably be the one clicking it to trigger the transition between the slides. Because otherwise, if the slide is ahead of you, then what are you going to do? So you should do it manually instead of having it to time itself. So after slide number 3, I'm going to add another slide, title and body, just the usual type. So after you talk about the specifics, you might want to talk about potential downsides, especially when you're talking about something that is controversial, that might have a plus side and a negative side. Okay, so when you want to have a negative side, then you can talk about that too. So you can, in this case, I can say, but what about? Okay, and these are things for this Senate bill. It's not really related to students, or from the students' perspective. But from my perspective, they're important. Maybe to some students, they're important too. But what about intellectual property? Intellectual property. Okay. Intellectual property refers to considering an invention, a creation of any kind, the property of the person who came up with the idea, okay, who invented it, who created it. In this case, the intellectual property belongs to the state. So if you read the document carefully and look for that word, okay, look for intellectual property. This bill will provide that the state will retain all appropriate rights to the intellectual property it creates or develops in the implementation of the bill. So it is kind of vague, whether faculty can retain their own intellectual property rights, or do I have to give up everything to the state, when I develop courses. So that part remains to be seen. Okay? And you can also see in an amendment, the state shall retain all appropriate rights, but basically it is the same sentence. Okay? So this is one potential concern. Okay? But you have to somehow connect it to the audience. As students, why do you care whether I can retain my intellectual property of my own stuff?
Why would you have good stuff up if you couldn't keep it as your own?
Exactly. Okay? But that's how communism failed, right? Exactly. So that's exactly your perspective is, well, maybe it doesn't impact you directly, but it does impact you indirectly when no faculty says, I don't want to put in any effort, into putting content into this virtual campus thing, because whatever I put into it is not my own property anymore, and every other professor in the entire state of California can use my material to teach the class. Okay. Now I may not think that way. I may think, okay, you guys can share all my stuff. I don't care, because it's all on YouTube already, right? But some other professors may not think the same way and say, I don't want to put in all this hard work just so that somebody else can use my work to teach a course. Okay, so that's something that you can also put back into your presentation in this case. Okay, so intellectual property, and you can use subpoints. When you have a main point that has subpoints, you can use indentation. Use this tool to increase indent to basically say under intellectual property we have these other things to discuss. Okay. Lack of motivation to innovate and create. And that's from the perspective of faculty. Teachers do not want to come up with their own stuff anymore. Okay. What about the funding? Who's getting the money to do what? Okay. As a taxpayer, you might want to know, who's getting the money. Well, first of all, who will be running those, servers, for this particular, virtual campus? It's not going to be me. I mean, I run Moodle, on campus here, but I'm not going to run the statewide, resource here. It's not going to be the IT department of Los Rios. So who do you think will be running the virtual campus?
Third-party company? Third-party company?
Most likely a private company is going to be out, it's going to be contracted out. Okay? So whenever something is contracted out, there's money involved, right? So let's say I'm not a professor here. Okay, let's say I'm a third party, a consultant, to the state, and I want to make some money. All right? So I approach, the virtual campus and say, I know you guys, have a massive information system to be implemented to get this virtual campus off the ground, and I'll offer my service to you. Okay, so you just have to pay me as a contractor, and I'll be maintaining the system, and doing everything that needs to be done. Do you think I have a vested interest to make sure that SB 520 passes? Absolutely. Okay. So that's called privatization. Privatization. And what is the downside of privatization? In other words, it's okay for me to make money if I can get a job done, and it still costs less than what our own IT department can do here. So when do you think it becomes a downside?
When, like you were mentioning, a company might have an interest in itself in making money more than the bill itself, and how it would affect its people.
Exactly. So they may or may not provide the service that is required, or they may take longer. And the bidding process is also, even though it's quote unquote transparent, a lot of that is still kind of behind the scene that people cannot see. Okay, so you might have 20 contractors, bidding for the same job. Okay, but eventually, which contractor will get the job? The decision process is not entirely transparent. You can see who's bidding for how much money, but the actual decision is not entirely based on money. Okay. right? So you can talk about privatization. So you can see how I can utilize subpoints to basically create kind of remind myself what else I have to talk about when I'm on a particular point. Any questions at this point? No questions? So you guys already know how to use the software for the most part? Some people do. But I think the software itself is not too hard to use unless you want to do something that's fancy. If you just wanted to capture the main ideas and the sentences that you want to include in your presentation, it's not too bad. I mean, this is actually not very difficult to use. And you don't have to save it on the thumb drive. This is in cloud storage already. You just log into your Google account on any computer with a browser, and you can continue to work on your presentation. Okay. So let's say we cover all of these things here, and I'm just going to fast forward all the way to the end. Do we just end the presentation like this? I get all the information out already, I tell you what I think about it, and that's the end. Yep.
You do summary.
You do a summary. That is very important. Okay. But this is only a 3-minute presentation. Surely people can still remember what I talked about 2 minutes and a half ago.
It's important to get down every single point as not necessarily as short, but as to kind of underline the points that were supposed to be made.
Right.
If you may have digressed in one way or another, these are but what you should come out with is, from the information is this, 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 and this.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the purpose of summary is, to be able to just kind of hammer it in at the last minute, so to speak.
And also, suggest action items, after reading, watching the presentation.
Okay.
In other words, in a gaming system, how do you put a gaming computer together? The end of that presentation may be a list of resources where people can purchase or evaluate components. So that would be Tom's Hardware, Newegg, and so on and so forth. So you're leaving something for people to take away, and also for people to actually to act on after the presentation. So once again, you're connecting to the audience, not just say, oh, this is what I know, this is what I think you should know, and that's it. Okay, this is what I know, this is what I think you should know, and this is what I think you should do, after watching this presentation. So that's what the conclusion is for. It has two purposes. One is to summarize and basically just recap everything that you have said up to this point. And then the second thing is to make suggestions about what people can actually do after watching the presentation. Let's say you talk about online security, okay, security on your computer, or viruses, or all kinds of malware, bad things that can happen to your computer. So after talking about what those things are, why they're important to your computer, and how to stop them, what do you think your summary slide can talk about? One, recap the resources. Okay, where can you find inexpensive or free anti-malware type of software? Okay, this is what you can get from Microsoft for free. This is what you can get for free from AVG, and so on and so forth. And you might want to also emphasize, do it now. Okay, check whether your system is already protected. Go home and run these tests, to check it. Okay, so those are action items to suggest to your audience what they should do, when they leave your presentation. When they get home, what should they do? Okay, so leave something like that. Because if your presentation has nothing like that, why do you even bother to present, other than to get your grade, for this class? So the summary, would have, two things, basically. Oh, I thought my mouse just froze. That would not be good. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is a recap of, the main points. So your recap, doesn't have to be in detail. It should not be in details. And then you can also have, an optional action items. So this part is optional. Action items. In this particular case, since I'm using the standard build, 520 as an example, the recap is more efficient online course offering potentially better quality. But the downside of this virtual campus, if I were a publisher, okay, like Cengage or some other publishers, do you think I might have some interest in this virtual campus idea? Why would I have any interest in that?
Because you might need books for your classes, and if you don't, they'll want you to.
Exactly. Now, I'm not sure how many of you know, how frequently I get visits or potential visits or invitations from publishers. Do you think, publishers will come to me maybe once every 10 years and say, Tag, do you want to use a textbook? We got textbooks. If you want to use it, that's fine. If you don't, we don't care. Or do you think they come to my office like every semester and say, Tag, which textbook are you using? You're not using our textbook? You know what? You should use our textbook. We can customize everything. We can cut you a good deal. And we can do all these other things. Just come use our textbook and online resources. What do you think is the scenario?
You end up having to use their information.
I end up having to use their information and their structure too. Now, with this campus, at least I have a choice. Okay, I can politely tell the publishers, I really don't use your textbook because I have my own resources already. I have a choice. But courses offering through this virtual campus will have no choice. Okay, they will have the entire template of the course already set up, quizzes, content, and stuff like that. Now, in some cases, that's a good thing, because when you have people like me who's not organized whatsoever at all, it's a good thing to have structure and organization that is already in the course itself. So what am I doing in a course like that? Everything is already laid out. The textbook is already specified. The content is already on the website. The quizzes are online already from day one. The homework assignments are already available from day one. What do you think is my job in that kind of a situation?
Retire.
No.
Takes away free thinking.
Grading.
It doesn't say
Grading.
everybody's gonna be all like the same.
Everybody's going to be the same, but I'll be the one person behind the scene answering email, and also addressing issues. If someone posts in the forum, hey, I have a question about blah blah blah, I'll be the one answering, right? So I'll be quote unquote manning the course. And then the second thing is now they can say this is a ARC course because it is being facilitated by an ARC faculty. Okay. So those are the things that are important. So when you recap, you have to recap things that you think are important for people to take away. Okay. So what about, or you can say, who is making money from this? Okay, and so on. Okay. So recap all the things that you think are important. What about the action items? Think about what you want your audience to do after watching the presentation. So even though you may be showcasing your gaming system, okay, you're not trying to promote an agenda of any kind, you're just saying, look at the cool stuff that I have, look at the cool thing that I have just done. Okay, it can be your 3D animation, you just learned how to use Blender and you just created your first animation, okay, 5-second animation, but it's really cool. You feel that you should tell the world about, oh, look what I did. But what do you think in that case, is something that would be an action item to encourage your audience to do?
Len just brought up a really good thing. If you're going to have everything online, somebody can do it for you.
Yes.
How are they gonna say, oh, this
That's
specific
exactly.
person?
Yep, that's exactly it too. So I'm going to add it here because I'm triple purposing this particular class. So who will be eventually teaching these courses? Because once they make one template for everything, they don't need professors in California anymore, do they?
Technically, no.
Right, but where's the integrity of the, she was just saying somebody could come in and do the work for you, the student.
Mm-hmm. From the student's perspective.
Supposed to be doing the work, but
Ah.
that student's gone at work,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody else is doing their work for them.
Well,
But that person that's gone is gonna end up with their
That's a-
degree and whatever.
That's a good point. But if you read the proctoring Okay, there we go. So if you read the Senate bill, it particularly addresses this point. It contains a proctored student assessment and examination process that ensures academic integrity and satisfactorily measures student learning. So that is a requirement of this virtual campus. And the way they can, this is what they have to do.
Webcam?
How are they going to how are they going to enforce this?
Webcam? I don't know.
Webcams? Yep, or?
On, yeah, I was gonna say that if it's proctored assessments and examinations, they can have an in-class period at maybe ARC here where you come in just to take your test.
Well, any type of proctored exam, I think means in-person proctored exam. Okay, I know webcam technology can do a part of that, but it can never really replace having a person in the class, because the webcam can only see a certain angle of view, okay, of the desk, the computer, the keyboard, or whatever, right? Nothing says there cannot be another person behind, the camera or out of the view of the camera, helping out the student, logging into another website, Googling, the answer key. And that's the other thing. If this is all, using publisher, content, using test banks, how long do you think it will take before the test bank itself or the key to the test bank is online, that is searchable?
Let's say 30 minutes after it's up.
Something like that, okay? Something like that, exactly.
When she was saying about students just going online and getting the contents off online and stuff, wouldn't that have some legal ramifications to it?
Not legal, it's academic. So someone who's not doing honest work in a classroom or in a class is not illegal. I mean, we cannot send those people to jail or fine those people. The worst they can do is to expel the student from a college.
Well, the reason why I was asking is because I turn around, like I mentioned before, I used to be an instructor at IBEW, and they got me to let me write my own class.
Mm-hmm.
And that was doing for telecommunication, Novell, and all that. And some of the information that I got from online,
Mm-hmm.
I had to get copyright, privileges to be able to use what they had.
Right.
So therefore, because what IBEW did was this: once I got the copyright privilege permission,
Mm-hmm.
then
Now,
IBEW was able to put it as a curriculum up under their name. So therefore, right now, even though they got all of my paperwork and all of the thing I did on PowerPoint and stuff like that, and I got all the copyright permission, I can't even touch it.
Right, because
the reason is that it's theirs. Because they paid me for it.
Yep.
They paid me to turn around and create the
A
class.
similar issue can exist
but,
here
but
too.
the copywriting part, as far as getting information from online
Mhm.
and anything else, I had to turn around and get that myself, and that's what I got. So that's what I was saying. You said basically a student, what they're doing, who has the permission to be able to show it.
Mhm.
And like I said, that's the reason why I was asking, because I went through that. And I had to turn around and get all legal rights to whatever I turn around and had. It didn't matter whether it was a picture.
Mhm.
It didn't matter whether it was a statement that was in a book.
You signed your rights away, basically. In that
Basically,
case.
that's
Yeah.
what it was. Because
Mhm.
other than that,
You get hired by them.
once I finished it, since I was already working for IBEW as an instructor,
Mhm.
they had the whole kit and caboodle, as you might want to say.
Yep, the whole enchilada.
And
Yep.
even though I was the one that went and got the copyright permission from this writer,
Uh-huh.
that writer, I still didn't have nothing to go on because
Right.
I was still working for IBW. So I mean, if a student do that, wouldn't that be basically the same thing? They
Well,
cannot
kind of.
come and say, hey, look, I'm presenting this.
Okay.
And that's all you can do is present it. You can't turn around and say, hey, you're gonna make this part of your curriculum.
I do have one more thing to say about a proctored exam. Now, remember, one of the objectives of unifying the entire platform is someone here can take a course, that is offered by, or taught by, or led by a professor in San Diego, right? So the proctoring cannot be in San Diego only or in Sacramento only, because now we have students from all over the state. We cannot say, on the final exam day, drive here to take the exam because it's going to be proctored. So what is the alternative if this is a requirement to be proctored? They will have
like
to have.
kiosks or something.
They're going to have some proctoring center or test centers set up throughout the state. Who will be manning? Who will be proctoring? Do you think that you can convince high school teachers who are already overwhelmed by the regular work that they do and say, you know what, can you come in on Saturday so you can proctor an online test that that's for the virtual campus?
They're going to be knocking out even more jobs.
They have 50 courses. If they have 50 courses
Yep.
That they're going to put out online, one can assume that at one given school that there might be up to 50 different classes being taken by at least 50 different students, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so you could have those all at once and have a dedicated proctor, because that's a lot of classes and a lot of examinations. That seems more than
And I think what will
Saturday.
happen is they will have contractors to handle the proctoring part
Well, yeah, you might.
as a service, as a paid service. So taxpayer will be paying, indirectly paying these, proctoring service people, which probably will be the same, company running the virtual campus. The other thing they're also, saying, but it's not in the Senate bill itself, is they want to use this model of online courses. It's called MOOC, M-O-O-C. MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Course, which basically means, it is not quote unquote, structured in one way. It's really just, course material. Somebody is, answering the email, and you guys are basically self-paced, completely self-paced. And also the number of students in each course is going to be massive. It's not going to be 40 or 50. It's going to be a lot more than that. Okay, and that's not in the Senate bill, but from what I have heard, this is also the model that they are going after. Is to make classes bigger, and therefore they're more efficient. So eventually, I think what happens is, most professors will not want to teach these online courses because they will be getting paid less, and there'll be more work, and they don't have any flexibility to create their own content and still keep their right to the intellectual property. So now, without the professors, saying, I don't want to teach a class like that, but they still have to keep teaching these classes because there's demand, right? So what would be the next step? We have these courses, we have the demand, but these guys don't want to teach it.
Outsourcing.
There you go. And when they are outsourcing, it doesn't have to be in California anymore. Doesn't have to be in the doesn't have to be in the United States anymore.
Like I said, POCs.
Yep. Yep. So this is a perfect setup for that. Now, it may be just the insane conspiracy theorist side of me screaming, all these nonsense. Okay, it's entirely possible. It's not the first time that I, talk about something that is completely insane. But on the other hand, it may not. Okay. Yep.
Do you think that this is a kind of good quality of education for in general? I was thinking for California. How about the other private universities?
The other states?
Like a
I
Bristol.
think Florida already has a statewide online course system for K-12. Yeah, so it's not California, but it definitely has to do with the bigger states and not the smaller states. Now, if you think about it, it makes more sense for the smaller states where population is kind of sparsely, it's distributed all over the place, and you don't want people to drive, all the way to, drive 20 miles, 30 miles to get to school. Okay, in California, for the most part, like Los Angeles, we have a lot of highly concentrated population centers, so it doesn't cost that much money to put an actual physical college, where people actually are. But when you go to some other states where the population is really dispersed, all over the place, online classes are much more. They make a lot more sense. But in California, there are more people, right? So if you are a private organization like a publisher or an LMS company, you stand to gain a lot more when you tell California to go onto the virtual campus thing compared to, say, Montana, which has a much smaller population. So anyway, the class time is over. So I hope this gives you guys some idea of how to get your presentation ready. So we'll start on the 7th. Yep. And I'll contact you guys shortly to see, who will be on the 7th. Yep. Say again?
I accidentally forgot to do the assignment.